Facebook, YouTube, Instagram are all borrowed audiences. You don't own these people's information. Those followers don't mean a hill of beans.
What would you strategically tell said person to do that only has maybe 500 to 1,000 followers?
The first thing I would tell you to do is build out a content strategy. That content strategy needs to include a schedule of what you want each piece of content to point to. You never want to just post on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube just to get followers and likes. Those followers don't mean a hill of beans. You want to point people to something else. So you need an email list, SMS marketing list, something that makes people say, if you offer more, I'm interested in learning. If they comment a certain word or if they click a certain thing, they're getting an email, a text message, or a DM to draw them into my community. One thing that I do, if I have a piece of content that I think is really good and it didn't do as well as I thought it could, I will.
What's going on, family, and welcome to another episode of MicToss, where we have the honor and the privilege of gleaning from those who have experienced success in their field. You know the drill. Go ahead, click that subscribe button, like, and turn on that notification bell so that you can officially be a part of the MicToss fam. This week, I want you to do something special. I want you to go ahead and drop in the comments throughout this episode things that you are going to apply to your life, to your field, so that you can start to experience success, because this episode is going to be one of mass amounts of practicality and tools that you can apply tomorrow and start seeing the benefit from. The guy that I have on today, I'm really excited about this episode because I've known him since 2019, and everything that he has built is something that you and I can take some tips, some tricks, some tools away from and apply in our field. Not only is he the senior pastor of Cultivate DFW, he is also the senior pastor of the work that's coming to Atlanta, Georgia. He is a blueprint of how to start your business, how to start whatever you're working on social media, taking those followers, turning them into digital disciples, building a community and a following, but then not only that, mobilizing them to build and to launch whatever the Lord has put in your heart. And so I'm so excited to have the senior pastor, the prophet, none other than Pastor Torace Solomon. Pastor, how are you doing, man?
Khalil, thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you. I am doing great and excited to dive into this conversation.
Yes, sir. I take it an honor. We've always been, kind of cool and close, but to see everything that you have been able to build and to see everything that you've been able to establish has just been amazing to watch. And I think so many of us can really glean from the wisdom that you're going to share. So I definitely want to just kind of jump in. Of course, we all know who Pastor Torace is today, but of course, the Pastor Torace that we know today did not just jump on the scene yesterday. Pastor, if you can take us back to the feelings that you felt the first time the Lord really gave you something large to do that you felt was a bit beyond who you were at that time, beyond the audience, the scope that you had at that time. Take us back to that feeling.
Yeah, it was 2018 when I started getting the itch to do more. I was working in a large nonprofit in North Georgia, and I was my career background was in human resources, and so I became bored with human resources. I became bored with the hiring. I became bored with the firing and the writing up, and I felt like God wanted more for me. I felt like, so I wrote a book, and the book did really well, and I wanted to take things to the next level. So I started hosting in-person trainings, and people started showing up to the in-person trainings. And so I started doing my first online class in 2018, and it was terrifying because I didn't really have a ton of support. I didn't have a following. I didn't have an audience. So I had all of the feels of worry and what are people going to think, and how are people going to respond to this? Do people really think that my stuff is good? So all of those thoughts rolled through my head, and it really for a little while, honestly, it led to crippling and even self-sabotaging um
Yeah.
behaviors that made me feel like I had to have someone's permission to be great.
Mm. To even hear that, to see where you are now, it's just crazy. And I think it is
Yeah.
something that many of us can identify with, whether we are beyond that phase of feeling like we need people's permission, or if we are walking into that phase of trying to
Yeah.
escape that thought. I think we've all been there. Now, what is interesting is you went from there into everything that we know about you today, from social media to Cultivate to deliverance training to prophetic training to online classes. When the Lord kind of prompted you to start to do those things, social media wise, the deliverance training, the classes, Cultivate You, what was your first move when you mustered up that courage to actually do it? Where did you start?
I started with everything that was free. So my first classes, my first classes were on Google Classrooms. Google Classrooms
Okay.
is much more robust than it was now. Google Classrooms, Zoom, emails. I started building using free platforms. I wrote out my curriculum, and I started using things that weren't going to cost me anything because I didn't have anything to pay. Um,
Yeah.
so I started off, really there. Facebook groups. I started using, and man, it's so much easier now. I mean, everything is monetizing, and everything is trying to get in on this content economy, this content market economy. So everybody's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, they've all created these features that make classes and courses and communities much easier now. Back then when I started, it was a clunky Google Classroom, and sometimes people could get in, and sometimes they couldn't. And it was a staticky Zoom where you sounded like a robot, and sometimes people enjoyed it, and sometimes they
Yeah.
didn't. So those were my first steps, just really doing research, and my experience, which I vowed to make sure no one ever experienced. I didn't have anybody that would show me the ropes. I reached out
Wow.
to people and asked them, "Hey, will you teach me? Will you show me?"
Mm.
Um, and they ignored me. I had one guy tell me, it costs some money to sit with me, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm willing to pay," and he ghosted me.
Wow.
And
Sheesh.
last year he reached out and was like, "Hey, can you want to collab on something?" And I'm like, "No."
Too late,
I
Deacon.
started I started with what I had. I started with where I
Yeah.
was, and I gave myself permission to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I studied everything I learned. I could learn. I'm probably a YouTube bachelor's degree right now.
Yes, sir.
I've
Uh-huh.
learned a lot from watching people in different genres or different niches. Um, and really just making it my own. And yeah, that's where I started everything that was free.
Man, first of all, what you just gave was already game, that I think our audience can glean from. And I know just from working with you personally in other jobs that we've had, I know that your mind is, I mean, when your mind gets going, it's brilliant. You think of things that other people haven't. And so just to give this budding generation, I know there's a lot of guys and women my age that have books, that have callings, that have prophetic things kind of locked up. And they may be at that starting small, starting with what they have phase. Let's say there's someone that has about 500 to 1,000 followers on YouTube or on Instagram. Knowing what you know now, and with all of the resources that social media and all these platforms provide us, what would you kind of strategically, operationally tell said person to do that only has maybe 500 to 1,000 people to kind of get them started?
Yeah. I would tell them to build a content strategy. We have the beauty of AI now. We didn't have AI back then when I got
Hello.
started.
Hello.
You had to really think. You had to work that muscle.
Hello.
Now we have the beauty of AI where the first thing I would tell you to do is build out a content strategy. That content strategy needs to include a schedule of what you want each piece of content to point to. You never want to just post on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube just to get followers and likes. You want to point people to something else. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram are all borrowed audiences. You don't own these people's
Ooh, that's
information.
good.
So you don't want to get caught up focusing on the aesthetics or the feeling of people following you on these platforms. Those followers don't mean a hill of beans.
Yes, sir.
If you want to monetize, you need to create a strategy. You need to build consistency. So,
Wow.
for example, if you're looking to develop content around business, utilize your platform, make your page about business development, post things about business, post statistics, ask your audience questions, post things that make people want to share, post things that make people think, post things that make people ask questions or answer questions. You want to hit a pain point, which gets things, when you hit pain points, it makes people share and expand that audience. When you start expanding that audience and building consistency, then you want to continue engaging them with not only just written posts, or right now slides. Instagram slides are really popular. Like,
this is true.
They're crazy popular right now. But build with consistency. After you start developing that audience, engage that audience, ask them questions, pay attention to what they're liking, pay attention to what they're not liking so much. If you have one thing that I do, if I have a piece of content that I think is really good and it didn't do as well as I thought it could, I will repackage it. If it was a slide, I will turn it into a reel. I'll sit in front of the camera.
That's good.
If it was a reel, I'll turn it into a slide. And more often than not, when you repurpose the content and maybe post it at a different time, it gets traction. Once you start getting that traction, you want to start pointing people to your platform that you own. So you need an email list, SMS marketing list. You need something that makes people say, if you offer more, I'm interested in learning more. So I tell people, I think in the terms of funnels, I use social media as the top of my funnel.
Yes, sir.
If you see a viral post from me or you see a viral video from me, more often than not, I have some type of automation on the back end that they comment a certain word, or if they click a certain thing, they're getting an email, a text message, or a DM to draw them into my community. So just start with consistency. Build your brand. When you find your voice, your niche, what you want to do, make yourself an expert in it. Post things that make people think, post things that people can actually learn from you. Give them value. Become a valuable voice by posting consistently. One good status is great, but that's not going to build your audience.
Yes, sir.
If you can consistently post valuable content, people start seeing you as a trusted voice, and they're more inclined to lean into your offers.
Man, that's really good. You mentioned the word monetize. And of course, we all know that the things that we do, especially if it is more so Christ-centered, is not for the purpose of money. However, that does help us do everything that we feel like the Lord has given us to do. So taking that understanding of monetization, how did you know when it was time to start monetizing for spiritual content? I know that's always so touchy in the church world, but how did you know when it was time to make that leap to monetize what God is giving you? Hey, I just wanted to stop and tell you thank you so much for tuning in to MicToss. I hope you are enjoying this conversation and the content as much as I am. But did you know that the majority of people that watch these podcast episodes are not subscribed? So can you do me a huge favor and go and hit subscribe to be sure that you are fully bought into the MicToss fam, and turn on that notification bell so every time MicToss has an episode, you are aware of it. This would help us so much to just ensure that MicToss becomes everything that it's supposed to be and reaches every audience it's supposed to. Thank you so much for your love and your support and making sure that MicToss can reach its full potential. Let's get back.
I noticed it when my books started. My first book that my second book that I wrote that became wildly popular was a deliverance book, and it's still popular today. When that book started selling out consistently, and I started getting emails with questions and DMs with insight and requests to come preach at people's churches and train other people's deliverance teams, I recognized, okay, there is something here. So I started a school. There are two things that we see throughout church history that revivals or moves of God birth. We love to talk about the churches that are planted out of moves of God, but there are often schools also planted out of moves of God. So I decided to plant a digital school where I taught people deliverance and charged them a tuition. And that's ethical. It's always been ethical.
Yes, sir.
You know, in the Bible, we had the school of the prophets. We don't know that they paid a tuition, but we do know that they paid with their lives. They lived together. They ate together. They served together. They did life. They gave up autonomy to live in a community. That was their tuition. You can't come live with me now, but you can sit in this class with me and pay a tuition to learn. They didn't have Zoom back then. They had to come and live with the man of God. Live and build with the man of God in order to receive and watch and learn him. Thank God for growth and technology.
Yes, sir.
We don't want you to come live with us, but you can.
Not at all.
You can come and sit and learn. So that's how you make it ethical. Create a school with a reasonable tuition where people can come and actually learn something. And if you have fruit, after you do a first class and you have fruit, then you use that fruit to reach into different fields and expand your audience. And that's what I did. Cultivate University started off as a school of deliverance. And it's expanded into much more now. But that's how I started it. I found that there was a need for the content. I had questions. I was traveling every week preaching. And I did not like traveling.
Got it.
So I created a way so that I could still be effective, still be impactful, and also be rested at home.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Now, when thinking about that, I think the next logical question that one would ask that popped in my mind is, now that I kind of have the permission or the go ahead to charge for something spiritual, the next question is, how do I determine what to charge? Is this based upon the level of gifting that I feel like I have? Is this based upon my level of tenure with whatever the conversation is? Because if I don't feel like I am the most qualified to speak to it, but I still feel like the Lord is charging me to do it, how do I kind of determine that price point for something that's spiritual, but yet very valuable?
I started off probably the wrong way. I'll tell you what I started off doing.
This is good.
Yeah. I started off giving everything away for free. And I think that's still a tool that people need to use.
Okay.
do free content to build
Mhm.
your audience,
Yes,
to
sir.
build the demand. We call it lead generation. So
Mhm.
do free content to get people's information, so that you can build an audience. And when you're first starting off, I started off probably wrong, but I started off charging people $50 for a class. And that was for a 6-week class for $50,
Wow.
Yeah. And that was people's reactions. Wow.
So they
This is
jumped right
6 weeks.
on it.
They jumped right on it. They fell in love with the class, and I used
Yeah.
their testimonials and slowly built from 50. And with spiritual content, I don't go crazy now. Business classes, coaching for business,
Yeah.
I'm gonna charge people. Hallelujah. We're gonna
Yes,
go
sir.
industry standard.
Yes, sir.
Hallelujah. But when it comes to spiritual content, I really am careful
Oh, that's good.
not to extort people, because they are gifted people, they're hungry people, and honestly, only 10% of Barna Group shows us that only about 10% of churches in America offer leadership development. So it's a huge niche,
Wow.
a huge gap, and people are hungry. So if I was heartless, I could
Mhm. Mhm.
charge crazy amounts of money, but I would miss out on 80% of my audience.
Wow.
So I offer lower ticket offers to an audience that I know is going to be more appealing to.
Yes, sir.
So it's not
Yeah.
$50 anymore, but
This is true.
it's not a million.
Yes, sir. I love how even in what you were saying, you were bridging really basic economics with spiritual practices. A high cost thing typically results in lower volume. That means less people coming, but of course, the return on your investment is much higher. Or you do a low cost thing that results in higher amounts of people coming, and then sometimes that return on investment could equal out, or your return could be greater depending on how many people you get to come. But then of
Absolutely.
course, we get into the conversation of the lower the value, people don't or the lower the cost, people don't always associate a high amount of value with it. So
Mhm.
people will sign up and give their $20 or whatever the case is and not come, which could then
Mhm.
make said new entrepreneur, said new spiritual class instructor feel as if their impact has not been as broad as they would like it to, because not a lot of people came, when maybe it was only because it wasn't priced at a good price point that would make people feel like I got to be there because I'm not going to waste my money.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's another conversation and deeper coaching for another day, but that's another nugget to just kind of give. Now, I think one of the things that we've all seen you do so beautifully is take the online presence that you have had and turn it into so much. You've taken it and turned it into, of course, the university, but you've also taken it and turned it into conferences, 2-day and 3-day conferences that, of course, people, pay to go to conferences. And then really within the last couple of years, you've taken that audience and turned it into a church. Now, I want to be careful with saying turned it into, in that Pastor Torace is not just doing things to do them, but he has taken what the Lord has blessed him with, the influence the Lord has blessed him with, to be able to birth future visions that the Lord has given him, which has materialized in the church. One, again, that is in Dallas, but then the other one that's coming in another city. And to take our minds to understand that that started with a following on social media. Pastor, I think there's something that we can all glean there. How do we mobilize our following to not just be online followers, but butts in seats? How do we start to mobilize them?
One of the things that I did that was different than most other people in the virtual space,
Mhm.
everyone else was pre-recording their content. And I was young and single and full of energy.
Yes, sir.
So I did everything live.
Yeah.
And in teaching people live, I started noticing that people started connecting with my voice and started viewing me as a leader instead of just content.
That's good.
And so um, I
Mm.
invested time in building my personal brand, um,
Mm.
living clean, staying out of drama, being
Ooh-wee.
consistent, being trustworthy, building a brand and a voice that was honest and transparent so that people felt like they knew me. And to some extent, people know I'm pretty transparent on social media.
For sure.
So that transparency plus that impartation from teaching bred not just a social media audience, but it bred sons and daughters and
Yeah.
disciples and mentees, some who have moved to Dallas to help me build our church, some who are moving to Atlanta to help me build our church there. Not just because they're fans or followers,
Yes,
but
sir.
because I've spent that time with them live. I've been transparent and I cast vision. If you want to be successful in anything, you've got to learn how to articulate vision.
I'll take that note.
And vision is nothing if you don't have a mobilization plan. Mobilization plan is your mission. How are we going to complete or get to this vision?
Yes, sir.
I felt like the Lord told me in the heart of the DFW, which is a very religious and staunch conservative Southern Baptist region. I felt like the Lord told me to start an equipping center, train the gifts in the region who were unsafe and didn't have leadership that actually developed what he invested into them.
Yeah.
And so I started casting vision towards that. I started speaking into that. I started hitting that thing on the head virtually. I started saying what the Lord showed me. I started sharing the dreams that the Lord gave me.
Yeah.
And the people who connected with the dream showed up. They connected with the vision, they showed up. And once those people spent some time with me and learned that I was safe and not crazy, or that I was not pimping the church and
Yes, sir.
taking their money and buying Cadillacs,
Yeah.
once they learned that I was trustworthy, those people began to beget people. And we're talking about a year and a half process that I believe was expedited because I stewarded my influence well. I didn't become intoxicated by it. I stewarded well to build what God has given me. And so taking that time, I know I kind of answered your question the long way,
That's good.
but taking that time to really invest in my personal brand. Now, people will teach you to, build the business brand first. And I agree, it's just a lot harder to get a business brand moving off the ground.
Yeah.
My personal conviction is I build a personal brand, become trustworthy as a person. And because these people trust me as a person, they will buy into the business brands that come out of my personal brand. So there are some people who have been longtime students of Cultivate University, and they
Right.
stay in Cultivate University. But then there a lot of the leaders in my church were students of Cultivate University, and
Oh, that's good.
they were trained by me virtually, and now it's been easy they know my voice, they know my heart, they know the way that I move, they understand the culture that I built virtually in Cultivate University has spilled over into Cultivate DFW.
Yes, sir.
And those people who were trained by me are now leading with me, which is further training. So that's the long way around. And that's when
No.
I have church planters, ask me, there are different ways to do it, but I really encourage people who, if you have a real gift, if you feel like you're called to plant a church or plant a school or anything, really build that personal brand. What do you
Yeah.
want to be known for? You know, do you live a life where you can be transparent? If you don't live a life where you can be transparent, you're not ready to plant. Investing in building that personal brand and transparency is really what gave me a leg up, and also, a leg up in Atlanta.
Yeah,
Well, I'm from Atlanta, so
for sure.
it's a little bit of a different combination of things, but yeah.
But even to that point, that was really good, because when I think about building a brand, typically people don't start with their personal character, convictions, that underground stuff. They typically start with the photo shoot and the
Here's what I
makeup
offer.
and exactly. They typically start with all of those things, and their life may not match up with the personal brand in which they're trying to portray. And I think for you to say, I'm from Atlanta, and you are going back to plant a church in the place that you are from, and people are going to come, that speaks to a clean personal brand. It's typically, when people leave a city, they don't want to go back because
I didn't
people.
want to.
I get that. Yeah. Yeah. And then I think sometimes, even in maybe them not wanting to, they may not be able to, because that personal brand was not the best for you to go back home and then people to follow you, or to have seen and adapted to and be okay with the change that you have experienced elsewhere. All of that is really, really good.
The
Now,
beautiful thing, not to
mhm,
cut you off, I
no,
want to add
please.
this. The beautiful thing about the people in Atlanta who've already connected with my church is because I've done so much virtually, and they remember me before
That's good.
virtual success. They've watched my journey from a distance.
Mhm.
And so being able to watch my journey from a distance and see what I built here in DFW and say, we want that here. We've
Mhm.
already seen a ton of success in Atlanta, more than I thought that we would.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
and as I think about it, one, my heart is full, my mind is blown that people believe in what we're doing.
Yes,
But
sir.
at the same time, I'm like, these people have been watching me. They've watched my character.
Right.
They knew me when I was there. They've seen me go off,
Mhm.
and now coming back, they feel like they know my story.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, I think sometimes for some, it is the rush of building the momentum, getting to whatever the place is, mobilizing the people into the first step, that they forget that there's a whole nother world after you have mobilized them to the big thing, the first step, the conference, the whatever the case is. So after everything that you've built, how do you maintain it to grow it to the next place, to grow it to the next level?
So I never do anything. If I build momentum for anything,
Mhm.
I never leave it there. I never do a big event just to do a big event. I always have follow up. So if I have a big course that I'm going to do, by the end of that course, or at the top of the course, I'm soft pushing a conference.
Mhm.
And so
Mm.
by the end of that course, by the end of them hearing me teach for 8 weeks, they're registering for that conference. And when they show up for that conference, I'm pushing them into the ongoing mentorship, the subscription
Yeah.
model. So
Yeah.
if you have momentum, the way you maintain momentum and steward momentum well is making sure you create something that leads people into something else. Now, everybody's not going to go,
For sure.
but that's the way you maintain momentum. So, uh, you know, um, when I had a big conference, in January, I
Mhm.
utilized that conference to launch another aspect, a 2-year track of my school of ministry,
Man.
and those students are with me every week, and they hear my voice every week. So when I announce a conference or an event in person, those students come from all over.
Yes, sir.
Um, and that's how it's been. I've teaching live. And I encourage people to do it. It takes a little more, and it takes a little bit of scheduling. But if you can teach live, you can find your people, and they will show up. They come from all over. Bermuda, London. I have people come from the Bahamas, Mexico, Canada. We have international students that blow my mind, and they show up.
Yes, sir. Man, this conversation has been really good, not just from the spiritual side, but this is the type of conversation that I enjoy having because it actually gives game to things that we can do to start to move out in whatever the Lord has given us. Typically, I ask our final question on this podcast, what is one thing you wish someone had told you when you were sitting in our seats and just starting out? But for this one, I want to do a little something different I want you to give us some wisdom and encourage us on how to come out of thinking that we are too small, we don't have enough yet, we don't know enough yet to move out at some level in what the Lord has given us. Now, to balance that scale, I do believe that there should be a level of preparation before someone starts. It's not, I got saved yesterday, and now that I'm saved, I want to, start a class about deliverance.
A prophet to the nation.
Exactly, right? Let preparation and let a time have its good work. But for those of us who have been processed, who have sat with mothers and fathers, those of us who have been taught, or even those of us who have had to be self-taught with Holy Spirit, and we feel as if we're now ready. How do we break out of that mold of, man, do I have something to say? Am I too small to start moving?
I like to say it this way. You need to silence that criticism and kill comparison. God calls the critical. And if you think about it, the pattern that we see in scripture, almost every person that we see have an encounter with God that he calls to do something great, their rebuttal is in that inner critic. Moses said, I can't speak. Gideon said, I'm the least of these,
Right.
Everybody had that. Jeremiah said, I'm a child, that inner critic. If you recognize that inner criticism, it's a sign that you're called to do something great. God calls the critical. It's a weapon that you have to turn it from inward to outward.
Yes, sir.
Use that critical eye, not just inward. Of course, be honest with yourself, deal with things that need to be dealt with, but use that critical eye, that critical eye, in the right perspective, or as a right tool, will be a weapon against comparison. Because criticism is like a scalpel. If you can cut through what you see other people doing and not make yourself feel inferior to it, but ask yourself, what are they doing well? What are they not doing well?
Yes, sir.
Critique it. Take from it, learn from it. Don't allow criticism and comparison to be weights and weapons against you. Turn criticism into a weapon. Critique what other people are doing, and make it fit you. Try it on. If it doesn't work, take it off. But just be consistent. Don't allow those things. Criticism is a poison to your purpose. And if you don't utilize it the right way, you'll be in that cycle of wanting to do but never doing because of what other people are doing.
Criticism is a poison to your purpose. That is so good, man. Pastor Torace, thank you so much for just coming on and giving us actionable steps, practicality, some game that we can apply. I mean, really starting tomorrow to help us move out into whatever the Lord has given us. Thank you again so much for joining us. And as always, I'm so happy that you have joined the MicToss fam. Be sure to subscribe, comment, and turn on that notification bell so that you can keep up with everything and every conversation that MicToss has, because I can promise you it's only going to get better. We'll see you next week.